Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all, and welcome to the second episode of a series of 3 webinars around the revolution in distribution. My name is Steffi Veen, I'm a digital strategist at Valtech, and with me today are 3 of our e-commerce directors. Randy Woods, welcome to you, Randy. Mark Pepin, welcome to you, Mark, and Pascal Lagarde. So, welcome. Last week, we discussed what we see happening in industrial distribution. We discussed how customer expectations are rising and how to address those. And we also discussed the emerging third-party marketplaces and how to stay one step ahead of those. In today's webinar, let me see if this works. Today, we will go more in depth on what you can do to empower your sales teams on one hand, and also how to simplify the lives of your customers. And since our motto is transform by doing, we will also show you a little bit of a demo of a white label concept we created. Pascal will guide you through it. For the rest, it's going to be more of a conversation like we did last time. Just one more point before diving into the content for today. We always verify our ideas and our concepts. So we therefore like to get your input and your feedback on the concept we will be showing you today. You can leave those comments in the screens that you will be seeing after ending the webinar. And in that little form, you can also let us know if you're interested in having a one-on-one conversation with one of our experts. Well, that's not working. So, having seen many B2B organizations from the inside, we've noticed that distributors often employ large traditional sales organizations, and they rely foremost on manual processes. But there is an opportunity to become more efficient and more effective as a sales organization and focus more on relationship building. From research, we know that digital sales enablement can reduce the time that you need per client, increase the number of qualified leads, but also increase customer satisfaction and loyalty. So, Randy and Mark, can you talk us through some of the solutions we've created for clients to empower their sales teams and show some of the results of those efforts?
Yeah, sure. Mark, I'll start. It's interesting, if you're a wholesaler or distributor or a manufacturer that has a wholly owned distribution channel, those are slightly different models, but they all have the same kind of challenges. What you really own at the end of the day is your relationship with the end partner. And so finding ways to make your sales team, your reps more effective is one way of defending yourself against the intrusion of marketplaces and also other competitors. So things we've seen organizations do include, on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see an iPad with some graphs on it. And this is an application we built for AAF Flanders a few years ago, in which we were able to surface the underlying information they had in their systems in a way that the sales reps were able to use it in the field to do more than simply take orders, but to help be an advisor to their clients. So in this case, it allowed them to build an ROI model on the fly with a client about replacing existing air filters with the filters they offered and show the return on investment, speak to the business outcomes of the product they were selling. And at the end, almost on the side, you were able to place the order. And the impact was pretty dramatic. They ended up with 700% increase in lead acquisition as a result, and almost 4,000 proposals delivered by that app in the first year. So the data was always there, the information was always there. We simply unlocked it by making this available to the reps.
Yeah, great point, Randy. You know, what we often see as well is, especially in terms of the B2B transformations, it really is kind of a convergence of portals, if you will, right? We often hear or are involved in conversations where all of these different portals, they're usually a result of different business systems performing specific tasks. And of course, you know, this is all at the expense of not only your internal customer, which is your sales and your customer service reps and things like that, but also now exposing them at the expense of your external customer, the B2B distributors' customers, right? So from that perspective, it really is about, as Randy said, really making sure that there's good, streamlined access to information. I mean, how many times have all of us experienced whereby you're on the phone or converging conversation with someone, and they'll basically say, do you mind if I put you on a brief hold while I look this up in my other system, right? We all know what that's like. So just think about that from that perspective. And it's really like streamlining all of that information access so it's right there. I think you'll get a good sense of what that looks like in the upcoming demo that Pascal will do. And the nice thing about that is, you know, not to oversimplify it, but these activities and these tools that you're going to be able to get your internal customers, your sales folks to utilize, really are very easily transformed and can be repurposed for your, you know, your customers for external access as well. So there's a good strategic type of process that can be repurposed and reused in that manner.
Great. And Mark, I just want to touch really quickly on the top right-hand corner where there's we talk about digital alternatives to events. We won't go deep in this, but we'd be remiss if we didn't speak about it a little bit. Distributors and manufacturers, wholesalers, often rely on either hosting events, their own events, or attending events as part of their sales channel. And COVID has obviously changed the way we're interacting with that. And we should mention that on both sides of the Atlantic, we have some fairly deep expertise in adapting physical events to online events. It's not a one-for-one, it's not straightforward, but we have found that it can be done effectively if you take the time to really think through how the experience changes for people who are sitting behind a desk rather than walking around a trade show floor. So if that's something that you're looking at, we have people who are doing that right now and have some expertise, and I think we've learned some lessons the hard way, so we're happy to share those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're actually in the middle of a lot of those type of challenges for a bunch of different clients, and especially in the distributor and manufacturer space.
And I think it's fair to say that we're all experimenting in the age of COVID, right? So we've done a lot of experiments, and we're getting better at this, so we can share that knowledge.
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, 2 screens is always nice. Although we know that one situation and one company is never the same as another company and another situation, and every project and every solution we create is completely different and unique, we still created a white label solution to make the digitalizing the sales process a little bit more tangible for people, because we also noticed that for a lot of clients it's difficult to get this message across internally, like, okay, what do we need to do? How could it look like? So Pascal will give us a demo of that tool and explain why we created certain solutions, and I will hand over and the presenter to Pascal. Yeah, I think you should be able to take over now, Pascal.
Let's see.
Good stuff.
I think you guys are seeing my screen now. Can you confirm that? Before
Yes.
I dive?
Yep.
Excellent. Yeah. So as you said, Steffi, we created this demo as a visualization of a concept that we came up with, and to some of the challenges that Mark and Randy talked about, to show what it could look like if we want to reduce the friction that is typically experienced by both sales reps and customers when using multiple systems. So it is about connecting and combining various underlying systems, such as a CRM solution and a commerce solution, and maybe your data lake or stuff like that provides insights, and bring that all together in a single interface, ensuring that we're breaking down silos and yeah, making sure that we're enabling the sales force and the customers as best as possible. So what you see here is a dashboard overview that has some different areas. One is around next best actions. So these are actions that are kind of surfaced by the by different systems. So something like a notice of a monthly order value decrease could come from your data, whereas a quote request could come in from a commerce solution, and an alert for an upcoming appointment could come from your CRM solution. And each of these will have kind of context relevant actions that you can take based on the items that are surfaced here. It also provides an overview of the active quotes and the active orders of the portfolio of the clients that the sales rep is responsible for, and get direct insights and alerts if something needs attention. And at the bottom here, you see some more visualizations and reports that will give you a quick overview on how your customer portfolio is doing in comparison to the targets that you have set. So as I said, this is a front-end concept that would leverage a headless front end that ties into the underlying systems via the APIs that these systems typically have available. And if we now switch to the other kind of side of the view and take a customer view, also for the customer, we can take a similar approach. And we've made cards and quotes and recent orders, so the commerce aspect of it more prominent, because that's typically the thing is that customers and purchasers are working with on a daily basis. We've incorporated typical B2B scenarios, such as the ability to have multiple cards that are stored or connected to specific projects that you may be running. Also the opportunity to request quotes before actually making a purchase. Products that were part of recent orders. Active card that you may be working on, but also here we have a section with next best actions that also could come from kind of different underlying systems, like insights that we typically see that this customer would reorder a certain product in a certain volume on a regular basis, abandoned cards or a company credit alert, or a quote that is awaiting approval. And it also obviously provides a great way for marketeers and merchandisers to engage with this customer and put messages, news, and new or best-selling items in front of them to ensure that they get visibility on the information and the products that are relevant to the context of the customer. So I think this is an example of how taking an approach in which we de-silo or break down the silos could actually empower both sales reps and customers, and making it easier for customers to do business with your company, and giving them these kinds of functionalities obviously will drive loyalty and ensure that the customer may not always be going shopping around for the lowest price, but also does business with the company that's easiest to do business with. That's quickly what I wanted to show. Yeah.
Right. I think we're saying a few words about how we actually developed this. And again, this is an illustration of concepts as opposed to a product. I want to be clear on that. But talk, about the iterative approach we went through and actually identifying the user needs and then surfacing these in a way that actually made sense for the client.
Yeah, absolutely. So this came off the back of an actual RFP that we received. So there were some objectives that were I would say fairly traditional when it comes to commerce and CRM. And by engaging with our customer, we kind of grew the concept into what it is today by having different iterations, doing user research, both kind of on the street when that was still possible pre-COVID. But also with our subject matter experts that have a lot of expertise in doing B2B projects, and at the same time also kind of challenging our technical team by saying, okay, so we want to do this, we want to keep it lightweight. How are we going to combine information and information streams from different sources and build that into a single interface.
Great. Yeah, what I like about this and what it illustrates is that we know from talking to a number of wholesalers, distributors, manufacturers that large investments have been made in back-end systems, but in some cases the business value is not being unlocked. It's simply not delivering the results that were anticipated. And to our mind, and I know that in the next session we have, Pascal, you're going to talk about the techniques for doing this, but that ability to surface the information that's in the silos and hide that complexity from the end user, whether that's a sales rep or your actual purchaser, it's a way of unlocking the value from the investments already made. And so that might be able, for example, seeing a simple reordering button together with what your credit limit is, which might be in two separate systems, or it might be combining CRM information with what's in your ERP to make the sales rep better equipped to deal with questions they're receiving from their customers. And so that sense that taking what you have today, the infrastructure you've invested in, and finding ways to make that relevant and useful both for your customers and your account reps, I think can be a very valuable strategy, particularly as we move away from physical contact into a more online world, thanks to our friend COVID.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think if you look at it from both sides of the equation, the efficiency gains are obvious, right? Yeah. So from that perspective, you're taking your sales teams and you're allowing them to be more consultative and in terms of what they're doing with their book of business, in terms of, and in some cases, you know, one of the things is not only just from a retention perspective, but it allows them to then even look at perhaps like customers that are about to lapse or that are no longer doing business with you. Looking at all of these kinds of data points, it makes it very, very easy for them to re-engage with customers and have that point of view in terms of knowing what their history is, to get them to, you know, obviously come back. And this translates very nicely in terms of reducing friction for self-service. We all know that self-service is key. There are so many different statistics that are out there in terms of, you know, making sure you've got great product data, because products are hard to find, and insufficient product information, and the ability to pay orders, and the ability to make sure that I know what is available to me in terms of things like promotions or incentives and all of that stuff that reduce the friction and, you know, obviously have a huge impact on your total cost of either retaining or acquiring new customers. So,
and Mark, well, the efficiency certainly works in terms of allowing people to order more easily. There's a convenience factor, but there's a real cost savings for the end customers too by being able to automate reordering or avoiding paper-based work. And so while there's efficiency gained by the distributor, wholesaler, manufacturer, that efficiency flows through to the end customer and has a very real business benefit. So really the whole supply chain ideally becomes more efficient through this and ties people more tightly together.
Yeah, I mean, we often talk with customers about, you know, we've all heard about don't make me think. We also extend that and say, don't make me work, right? So make it easy for me, make it frictionless, and make, you know a lot about me, leverage that, and again, make that sticky. We keep going back to the Westcon scenario whereby automation, you know, with the internal streamlines, they have this whole reordering process, which is automatically, you know, sent not only to their sales reps, but also to customers. And there's 44% of those renewals that they're getting now that they otherwise would not have been able to do at all without that, you know, without that investment and without that automation.
You know, what's fascinating is that data was already there, but they had to find a way to make it actionable for the reps and for the consumers so that they're actually able to know that they had to renew their licenses. So in some cases, a small extra step will deliver the value of the investments already made. And I think it's really important and we're showing a few examples here of business-to-business applications that we've built or portals. In all cases, I think it's critical that you come to the table with an understanding that the world of manufacturing and distribution is very different from the B2C world. You have to deliver the same levels of convenience, but you have to do it in a world where your customer is often a business which has multiple buyers within that business. So Pascal, things like multiple shopping carts in parallel, and also transparency to let people see between those shopping carts what others are doing. It's sort of a critical factor in certain business-to-business scenarios and doesn't even make sense in the business-to-consumer scenario. Similarly, things like getting access to credit limits or equipping the sales team to know when to reach out to a client when they're having trouble with their online purchase. These are very much B2B concepts, which can help drive forward the efficiency and effectiveness of distributors and wholesalers, but which really don't apply quite as directly for most business to consumer scenarios.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think what's also important to note with that too is taking this to the next level, right? In an experience whereby you are shortening that cycle where you basically can be available with your sales reps and your customers in real time, and doing things like, you know, collaborative browsing or pushing information into their carts, or vice versa, or completing an order for them. All of these things are, you know, obviously super important that, you know, help with that process.
Point. You already started a little bit around, you already touched upon some of the projects we did. I mean, self-service is obviously just one part of simplifying that process. We did many different projects around personalizing the experience, simplifying the experience. You already mentioned a couple of those examples. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more, because they can, I mean, it's not only self-service, it's much bigger than that.
Yeah, so, and I think these things nest together, right? So when you talk about personalization in the B2B context, in many cases, you're not really worried about the demographics of the person purchasing, whether they're male or female, or their age, which you might be in a business to consumer scenario, but you're absolutely interested in sort of the firmographics about the organization. So if they've logged in and you know them, they purchased from you before, you know things like what the credit limit is and what they tend to purchase in the repurchasing profile. And you can personalize the experience, so you're using that information to make what's most relevant, most apparent to the visitor. And similarly, but different in execution, if you don't know them, so before they've logged into a portal, you can identify the company that's arriving, know which vertical they're in, have a sense of their size. This is information that's available, and then you can use personalization to tune your messaging to those. And then kind of as an extension of that, when we're doing marketing automation, which we've done for a number of business-to-business firms, including Daddario, you're in a scenario where you're able to structure a script to continue conversations with clients either before, after, or after purchase, which doesn't require the attention of the sales rep. So rather than asking them to craft each email message, you let computers do what computers are really good at and automate those conversation streams. And you can use logic so that depending on the client's response, you can send a different email, different messaging. And we've seen that to be very successful in helping stay relevant to the client between the period when they've ordered and when the next reorder happens.
Yeah. We wanted to keep these kind of these webinars snackable, short, and also interactive. So we are about to jump into some of the questions, but I give the audience a little bit of time to think about the questions and already add them to the chat. I'm also, because especially during COVID, there were lots of companies that also approached us. We have a major opportunity here, or a major challenge here. Can you help us? So are there also ways to, some of these cases are quite big projects because you have to integrate a lot of backend systems. Is there also, what type of ideas do you have around doing this in a simpler and faster way? Maybe you can elaborate a little bit around that, Pascal, from an architecture and technology perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the big challenges, and especially in a situation where there are already so many systems in place, doing, you know, kind of big bang replacement projects, replatforming projects are virtually impossible, and we'll definitely be talking about that next week as well. But so starting small, doing an experiment, trying to figure out how, maybe as our demo also showed, putting a new interface on the, let's say, old business logic is a great way to experiment, to bring stuff together, and to figure out where the actual value is in the relationship that you have with your customers. And you know, modern technologies enable us to do that much quicker and much faster than maybe a few years ago.
Steffi, I'm sorry, the client's name is escaping me. Was it Wavin for whom we stood up the e-commerce site very quickly in response to? Can you say a few words about that, because you're closer to that client than I am?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an interesting case. So Wavin is a manufacturer of piping and drainage systems and those kind of things. So they have all the expertise and technology to build stuff out of plastics. And they figured that they could fairly easily transform part of their factory to make personal protection devices, face shields, to help people in the front line of COVID. So building those things were one thing, but they didn't really have a direct to consumer or to direct to customer channel because they completely rely on distributors for their product. So we helped them indeed in just a matter of 2 weeks to build a front end, not only to sell the products, but that actually integrates into their existing order management solutions to be able to actually also fulfill those orders. Capturing the orders is one thing, but actually fulfilling them is another. And it had to be quick and obviously with some checks around it to make sure that the company ordering was actually in the field of in the COVID field or whatever you want to call it. But that's a great example where these modern technologies help us to do this really quickly.